So human psychology is all about understanding human beings. It's about celebrating the uniqueness of human beings, because the subject, the basic unit of psychology is a person, a human being. Now, if I integrate what both of you have said, you mentioned four things: brain, behavior, beliefs, and psyche. Right. So brain is the biological component of human body. Correct. So yes, it's a seat of thoughts and everything. So brain is more biological, though we have integrated it very beautifully in neuropsychology, neurocognitive psychology. So that's one part of it. When we talk about psyche, that's a very abstract kind of a term, right? I would rather introduce you to a term which is a more concrete version of psyche, and it's mind. And now what's mind? Mind is sum total of all our experiences, isn't it? So Facebook also asks you, what's on your mind? Right. So mind has three levels, and I'm sure you have heard the levels, you've heard the, somewhere or the other, you have come across these three: the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. I'll touch upon this a little later, right? And then you said behavior. Behavior is an overt expression of our thought and emotions, right? So when I say something and when one of you nod, you non-verbally, you are able to communicate it to me that you got my point and we are on the same page, isn't it? So behavior is overt, observable expression of what's going here or here. And then you said beliefs, right? Beliefs are, our core reference points out of which our behavior, our thought, our emotions, they sprout. Again, we build up belief over the period of time, and parenting has a very important role to build up the beliefs, because our first exposure to the world is through our parents, right? The first school is home. So basically, there are three H's in psychology. There, if we look at the subject matter of psychology, it's the head, heart, and hands. Correct? So head, which normally someone coming from non-psychology presumes it to be the brain, it's basically mind, right? Head is the seat of thoughts. It's the seat of cognition, technically speaking. So human psychology is interested in thinking, in understanding the thought process of other people. The other H is heart, that is emotions, feelings, temperament, sentiments, complexes. Technically speaking, this is the affective part of our existence. Why is it that someone is so touchy and sensitive about something and someone really takes it in the stride? That's because we differ in the way we interpret situations and how we respond to those situations, or how we react to those situations. And the third aspect of psychology is the hands, which Abdur, am I pronouncing it correctly? Yeah. So probably.
Yeah, right.
All right. So one of you brought out, I missed on who responded after Seema. So you said behavior. So the third H, which is hands, that's behavior, right? So psychology is a science of thoughts, that's cognitions, affect, that's emotions, and hands, that is behavior. So to begin with, we called it a study of mind and behavior, but now with the kind of tools that we have, with the kind of means that we have to study, You know, we have neurocognitive psychology, so we can actually capture a brain in action, right? We have CT scans and PET scans and so many sophisticated techniques. So now it's a full-fledged science, because anything that I talk about, anything psychology talks about, it's not philosophy anymore. It's not a dialogue anymore. It's not, somebody's myths and somebody's beliefs. It's a scientifically proven fact. In psychology, it got separated from philosophy years ago, because then philosophers, they were wanting to find answers to certain questions, which, through dialogues, they were not able to achieve. So then, psychologos, that's the science of, or the study of breath, or study of soul, or study of life, it was called. And we have come a long way from study of life to a science of mind, that's cognitions and behavior. So when we study, or when we understand people from perspective of their thoughts, from perspective of their emotions and their behavior, we certainly get better insights into why somebody is behaving the way he or she is behaving. It all boils down to the thought process. And as I said, mind is the seat of the thought, and mind is the sum total of all our experiences till date. It's important for us to understand that there are 3 levels of mind, and all our behavior is actually driven from these 3 levels of mind. And that's what, psychology tries to unravel. The first level of the mind is called as the conscious mind, right? When I say conscious mind, we say here and now experience, what's going on in the moment. So if we talk about this moment, right, I'm presuming that all of us are thinking about, all of us are attending to, consciously paying attention to this lecture that is going on. So we are 23 people on this call, and at the moment, if no one is distracted, our conscious mind is focusing on what is going on here. There was a famous book in which there was a myth got created that we only use probably, 2% of our mind or something like that. So basically, we don't use just 2% of our mind, but yeah, at the given moment, out of the whole big thing that we carry on our shoulders, right? What is alive to us, what is available to us is just a very small bit of it. It's like, your computer holds so many files and folders, but at a given point of time, you're working on probably one of the files, isn't it? So what is given here, what is present, what is in the moment, is what is called as the conscious mind. And then we have the subconscious mind, right? Again, subconscious mind is that aspect of our mind, or that layer of our mind, where we keep all the memories which are readily available to us. So if I just ask you, okay, what's your phone number? Where do you stay? Right? When did you get married? What's the name of your children? You were not thinking about these things, right? But the moment I ask you to recall it, you're able to tap there. You're able to retrieve that information. It's the same as our long-term memories. It's the library within the brain that we refer to when we have to access some information. And then the third most intriguing part of human mind is the unconscious mind. Now, we experience a lot of things, right? And not everything is pleasant, right? There are moments that we come across certain things that we are embarrassed of. Sometimes we're even guilty of, right? Sometimes there are things that make us feel ashamed of something that has happened to us, or we did something to someone that we are not very proud of, right? And then unfortunately with some people, they come across certain traumas in their lives and certain very terrible, horrible kind of things. Okay. Now, if I were to ask you, is it easy to live with those memories, those terrible memories, or an emotion of guilt or shame? Is it easy to live with it? Yes or no? No, it's not. Okay. So to make our life little convenient, what we do is we suppress these memories into a part of our mind which is called as the unconscious mind. Okay, this is again a very unconscious process. You don't do it on purpose, but to protect the word that you used, Seema, psyche, to protect your psyche, to protect your sanity, right? There are so many experiences, there have been so many exposures that we simply cordon off from our conscious mind, and we somehow manage to keep it away from our conscious mind, because thinking about it, reliving it, you know, retrieving that information makes us feel anxious, right? So though we don't deal much with the unconscious mind when we come from the space of coaching, but we must understand that even though it's like, you know, you had a lot of dust in your house and somebody just rang up that they are going to call you in, they are visiting you, you had no choice but to quickly, you know, put everything under the carpet, right? You hid it there. So the house looks clean. That's the conscious stuff is very clean now, but under the carpet, there is enough dust that suddenly, you know, after a few weeks of this incident, you know, there's a baby crawling in the house, he's suddenly sneezing, somebody else is wheezing. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that, okay, it's out of sight, but it's still in your mind. So that content which you have very sophisticatedly, smartly, you know, hidden it in this so-called storehouse of your mind, it is making its presence felt by giving you certain symptoms. Right? So even though you have cordoned off a childhood experience away from your psyche, you know, you would realize that certain situations make you feel uneasy. But when you think about it, you're not able to realize why. Why am I? And you're avoiding certain situations. You avoid certain kind of people. You avoid certain kind of interactions. So when you consciously take decisions, when you consciously behave, right, you are aware of why you're doing what you're doing. Correct. Now, you're being enrolled in this course, being a part of this class, it's a conscious decision. You know, there are goals attached to it. There are certain antecedent factors which would have led to this. But there are so many behaviors which we cannot really figure out, why did I do that? There is this beautiful movie, Highway. I don't know how many of you have watched that movie. I'll just give you a context of this movie to make you, explain the unconscious mind to you. So there is this girl who gets kidnapped, and she comes from a very well-to-do family. The police is searching her all over the place. And the kidnapper is, you know, taking it all across the country in a truck. And then incidentally, there is a moment when the truck is intercepted by the police. The police checks and, you know, searches for the girl in the truck, and the kidnapper knows that that's it. This is the end of it, right? And but somehow the police is not able to find that girl out there. She had a choice to go, to be found, you know, to run away and to go back home. And she hid herself. And the police cleared off the truck, and then they are sitting somewhere, and he asked her, why didn't you go? And she said, I don't know. Right? Now, she chose not to go back to the comforts of her house, and she chose to be a vagabond with the truck driver who's supposedly her kidnapper. And then she sat, and then she opened up to the driver that I come from a very well-to-do family, but as a child, you know, I had been molested by one of my uncles, right? And I'm like a bird caged in a golden trap. I don't want to go back home. It took her a little while to retrieve that information, that why didn't I go back home when I had an option? And when she said, I don't know, right? That's the decision which has been influenced by the information in the unconscious mind. And it takes us a little while to reach out to that information, to unravel that information. right? I don't know how many of you have been exposed to Johari's window. Have you heard of that ever before? Johari's window?
Yes.
Okay, great. So those of you who have not, just Google it once the class gets over. That's a beautiful concept, which again gives us an insight into the different dynamics of human mind and in relationship to self and other people. So psychology is a beautiful subject. Why? Because it helps us have a better insight about our own selves. It helps us discover, lot of those intentions, motivations, beliefs that drive our behavior. Even, the thoughts, the effective one and the ineffective one. We don't use the terms positive, negative emotions. For emotions or thoughts are only effective and ineffective thoughts, and how we can replace the ineffective thoughts with that of more empowering thoughts to be more functional individuals. So that is what is this science of psychology. Any questions, any insights, anything that you wish to say or ask?
I have a question. Sorry, Kartik.
Yes.
Please go on, Kartik. Please go on.
Yes. Oh, thanks, Nama. Just a small analogy based on what you mentioned just now. So from the understanding, the subconscious mind is one area, the unconscious mind is another area, and conscious mind is the third area which you mentioned. So the conscious mind is like the present, you said, right? It's basically the present one. So all that has happened as an experience to us in the past is all we call as the unconscious mind, right?
Or the subconscious.
Subconscious mind. So it's like the present and the past is all stored as one single, and that's what collectively we call as the unconscious mind, is it?
No, collectively it's mind.
Right.
The part of the mind which is not readily accessible to us is the unconscious mind, because it carries, and it's a seat of a lot of unpleasant things. So, it's like that Pandora box which we don't want to open.
Right.
Whereas the subconscious mind is something which is readily available to us, like things you can easily recall. Where did you stay, 5 years ago? What's your home address? Something which is readily available to us, right? And the conscious mind is this interaction, which is so sacred. This sacred moment when two people or a human being is interacting with this current flow is what is called as conscious mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, there's a question that does the unconscious mind necessarily have only the depressing and the not so good feeling thoughts? It's only with the.
That's a very good question. Mostly yes, but even those experiences of our life which are not salient, like what did you eat 5 days ago? It's not a very salient information to kind of be keeping alive, like it's like filling up the shelf of your workbench with. So all that has happened, but then we feel it's not worth keeping in our memory, is also a part of the unconscious mind.
You mean even the insignificant ones?
Yes, that's what insignificant ones. Yes.
And ma'am, I just heard you saying that the subconscious mind is something which you can retrieve fast. Is that so? While talking to Kartik, while explaining to Kartik.
Nama, is that how we pronounce your name?
Yes, Naama. That's it.
Naama. Okay. So Naama, there are different versions. Subconscious mind is something that has been so much talked about, even in the self-help books and coaching fraternity. The simplest way to understand subconscious is how I have introduced it to, right? So yes, subconscious mind can also be understood as something, which is the seat of habits, seat of rituals, isn't it? Things that we do on everyday basis, which are like automated aspects of our behavior, right? Now, for example, just imagine this, all of you would be sleeping in a particular side of a bed. All of us would be getting up in a particular manner. We all have some morning rituals. We have our favorite cups that we have, tea or coffee or hot water or lemon, this, that, in the morning. Then, you brush in a certain manner. Even we have bathing rituals, isn't it? So things that are so ritualistic and so automated that we don't have to invest our conscious energy into them. You can also understand the subconscious mind in that manner.
Oh.
I hope that satisfies your question.
Yes, more or less. Thank you.
Deepak, is there anything you want to ask? Can you please unmute yourself first?
Sorry, I think Seema, you can go first.
That's okay, carry on.
Okay, so I have one question related to subconscious mind. What I understood is it's more like an automated thought process which drives our habits on a daily basis or momentary basis. Now, does it also mean that this subconscious mind also impacts our conscious thinking?
Big yes, all capital. Because, we are cognitively very miser people. We don't want to expel too much energy on everyday things. So there are so many automated programs which drive us into things. So Deepak, it is the subconscious mind somewhere which makes us reactive to certain situations, right? Because you don't really consciously process that information, and there's a trigger, gets pressed, and there you go. Right? Seema?
Yeah, hi. A couple of other workshops that I attended, my understanding is that brain usually stores things in the form of memories or pictures. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is done in the subconscious mind. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So by far, my understanding was that, as you said, an unconscious mind is not readily and willingly accessible by the human being. Okay. However, when there's amygdala hijack, we react to the stimulation, to the stimuli, right? Basis the experience, past experience, which is stored in the subconscious mind.
True.
Right? Now,
True.
if the reaction is negative, if it's quick, shouldn't that connect to the conscious mind? Because you said a lot of negative impact that we have that is kind of stored in the conscious mind. We don't want to access it.
Seema, unconscious mind. Negative
things sorry. Unconscious mind.
Yeah. Unconscious mind. Yeah.
So unconscious mind.
Yeah, very much. I mean, when it comes to negative things, like now that you've attended the workshops, you know that amygdala is the seat of fear. And, it gets conditioned because of whatever past experiences have been. Right.
So is that connected to both unconscious and subconscious?
So subconscious need not have unpleasant things.
Okay.
Amygdala, you're talking about amygdala, right?
Yeah.
What are the triggers for amygdala? Fearful and threatening
potential threat. Potential
Correct.
threat.
So that's what I said, that through the unconscious mind, when we're talking about unconscious mind, that's where those threatening, unpleasant kind of situations have been stored. Right. So what you are saying is absolutely correct. What I said was day-to-day rituals. So day-to-day rituals have nothing to do with threat, Naseema. Which hand do you brush your teeth with, right? And do you take a shower or you take a bucket bath? That has nothing to do with amygdala or unconscious. So that's subconscious. But you are absolutely correct when it comes to threat, when it comes to fearful instances. So biologically, that information is stored, that information triggers amygdala, correct? But when we talk about it from psyche perspective, mind perspective, experience perspective, that information is there in the unconscious mind. Yeah. So now these are not boxes or compartments in the head. Let's understand that. The unconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious mind, what is it? These are nothing but just synapses, isn't it? So it's not that there is an architectural structure that we can pinpoint. Like you said, amygdala is a seat of fear. So there is no seat of unconscious in our mind. They are just memories that are stored in form of synapses in the brain.
So would I be right in my understanding that if there is a potential threat, then it connects to whatever memories has been stored in the unconscious mind?
Absolutely.
Then it's accessible because of the potential threat.
Memories need not be accessible, right?
The feeling, the feeling, and because of that, the reaction.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you have any physical issue also, no, you just get to feel the symptoms, right? You don't get to feel the virus inside your body, right? So precisely, in same manner, you said it. It's the feelings that get triggered.
Okay, fair enough. Got it. Thank you.
All right. So let's have
that dream about the dinosaur and the leotard. Those times that you said that thing that you know you shouldn't have said, or even that thing you didn't even know you were gonna say. The little cogs of your consciousness cranking away, making your life possible, making society function, all of the things that you're so glad you can do, and all the ones you wish you could stop doing. Excluding other human minds, your mind is the most complicated piece of the universe that humans currently know about. The rules that govern it are mysterious and elusive. Maybe our brains just aren't complex enough to understand themselves, but that's not going to stop us from trying. The word psychology comes from the Latin for the study of the soul, and while its formal definition has evolved over the last several decades, today we can safely call it the science of behavior and mental processes. The term psychology wasn't coined until around the turn of the 16th century, and a practice that we would actually call science today wasn't established until the mid-1800s. But of course, humans have always been curious about themselves and what's going on up here. Aristotle pondered the seed of human consciousness and decided that it was in the heart, not the head, being, as we have seen quite a lot here on Crash Course, absolutely and completely wrong. 2,000 years ago, Chinese rulers conducted the world's first psychological exams requiring public officials to take personality and intelligence tests. And in the late 800s, Persian Dr. Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, also known as Razis, was one of the first to describe mental illness and even treated patients in what was essentially a very early psych ward in his Baghdad hospital. From the efforts of those early thinkers up until today, the field of psychology has been all about tackling some of the big questions. How can humans do horrible things like commit genocide and torture other humans, and how come we know those things are horrible? Do we have free will, or are we simply driven by our environment, biology, and non-conscious influences? What is mental illness, and what can we do about it? And what is consciousness, or the notion of self?
The non-conscious is the same as unconscious. No difference, just a different word for it.
If I lose my awareness of myself, am I still human? I don't know! But over the next 6 months, these are the questions that we're going to be exploring together. How our brains work, how they can break, how they can be healed, why we behave the way we do even when we don't want to, and what it means to be thinking and feeling and alive. When hearing the word psychology, most people probably think of a therapist listening to a patient unpacking the details of his day while reclining on a couch. Maybe that therapist is wearing glasses, chewing on a cigar, stroking his whiskered chin. Admit it, if you're thinking about psychology, you're probably picturing Freud. Sigmund Freud was one of the most tremendously influential and controversial thinkers of his time, maybe of all time. His theories helped build our views on childhood, personality, dreams, and sexuality, and his work fueled a legacy of both support and opposition. His life was long and spanned an important swath of history from the American Civil War to World War II. But like most great scientists, Freud developed his revolutionary ideas by building on the work of others. And of course, innovation in the field didn't stop with him. In truth, psychology is one of the most wildly diverse sciences in terms of the questions it proposes, the methods it applies, and the different schools of thought and disciplines it contains. Perhaps more than any other science, psychology is just a big old integrative melting pot. For instance, right around Freud's time, there were a lot of different schools of thought about how the study of the human mind should be tackled. Mainly, there were the ideas of structuralism, functionalism, and psychoanalysis. Scientific psychology got its start in 1879 in Germany, when physician Wilhelm Wundt set up the first psychology laboratory at the University of Leipzig just a few years after publishing his Principles of Physiological Psychology, considered the first true psychology textbook. Wundt and his student Edward Bradford Titchener took cues from chemists and physicists and argued that if those people could break down all matter into simple elements or structures, why couldn't they do the same for the brain? They tried to understand the structures of consciousness by getting patients to look inward, asking them how they felt when they watched a sunset or smelled a coffee or licked a kitten or whatever. Titchener named this approach structuralism, but despite its rigid-sounding name, it really relied so much on introspection that it became too subjective. I mean, you may sense and feel something different than I do, even if we lick the same kitten. Psychologists, of course, can't actually observe a patient's inner thoughts or feelings, so ultimately the structuralist school of thought was fairly short-lived. By contrast, American physician and philosopher William James proposed a different set of questions, focusing on why we think and feel and smell and lick or whatever. Basically, he focused on the function of behavior. This approach, functionalism, was inspired by Charles Darwin's idea that adaptive behaviors are conserved throughout the evolutionary process. James published his seminal book, The Principles of Psychology, in 1890, defining psychology as the science of mental life, just as Freud was starting to flex his big brain. That dream about the dinosaur and the leotard. Those times that you said that thing that you know you shouldn't. People probably think of a therapist listening to a patient on diverse sciences in terms of the questions it proposes, the methods it applies, and the different schools of thought and disciplines it contains. Perhaps more than any other science, psychology is just a why couldn't they do the same for the brain? They tried to understand the structures of consciousness by getting patients to look inward, asking them how they felt when they watched a sunset, or smelled a coffee, or licked a kitten, or whatever. Titchener named this approach structuralism, but despite its rigid-sounding name, it really relied so much on introspection that it became too subjective. I mean, you may sense and feel something different than I do, even if we lick the same kitten. Psychologists, of course, can't actually observe a patient's inner thoughts or feelings, so ultimately the structuralist school of thought was fairly short-lived. By contrast, American physician and philosopher William James proposed a different set of questions, focusing on why we think and feel and smell and lick or whatever. Basically, he focused on the function of behavior. This approach, functionalism, was inspired by Charles Darwin's idea that adaptive behaviors are conserved throughout the evolutionary process. James published his seminal book, The Principles of Psychology, in 1890, defining psychology as the science of mental life, just as Freud was starting to flex his big brain. Sigmund Freud began his medical career at a Viennese hospital, but in 1886, he started his own practice specializing in nervous disorders. During this time, Freud witnessed his colleague Joseph Breuer treat a patient called Anna O with a new talking cure. Basically, it just let her talk about her symptoms. The more she talked and pulled up traumatic memories, the more her symptoms were reduced. It was a breakthrough, and it changed Freud forever. From then on, Freud encouraged his patients to talk freely about whatever came to mind, to free associate. This technique provided the basis for his career and an entire branch of psychology. In 1900, he published his book, The Interpretation of Dreams, where he introduced his theory of psychoanalysis. Now, you probably think of psychoanalysis as a treatment, the whole patient on the couch scenario, and that's definitely part of it. But Freud's concept was actually a lot more complex than that, and it was revolutionary. The radical kernel of psychoanalysis was the theory that our personalities are shaped by unconscious motives. Basically, Freud suggested that we're all profoundly affected by mental processes that we're not even aware of. Now that sounds almost obvious to us now, but part of the genius of Freud's theory was that in 1900, it wasn't obvious at all. The idea that our minds could be driven by something that our minds themselves didn't know about was hard to grasp. As hard as, maybe organisms evolving by natural selection. It was abstract, invisible, and there was something about it that seemed irrational. But the other important part of Freud's theory was that the subconscious, literally the thing below consciousness, was still discoverable. Even though you weren't aware of it, you could come to understand it through a therapeutic technique that used dreams, projections, and free association to root out repressed feelings and gain self-insight. So what Freud was really saying was that mental disorders could be healed through talk therapy and self-discovery. And this was a really big breakthrough, because prior to this, people with mental illnesses would be confined to sanatoriums and at best given menial labor to do, and at worst, shackled to a bed frame. After the interpretation of dreams, Freud went on to publish over 20 more books and countless papers with an iconic cigar in hand all the while. He believed smoking helped him think, but it also helped him get jaw cancer. During the last 16 years of his life, he underwent at least 30 painful operations while continuing to smoke. By the late 1930s, the Nazis had taken over Austria Austria, and Freud and his Jewish family narrowly escaped to England. By September 1939, the pain in his cancerous jaw was too great, and a doctor friend assisted him in suicide through morphine injection. He was 83. Whether you love him or hate him, and make no mistake, plenty of people vehemently disagreed with him, there is no question that Freud's impact on psychology was monumental. While competing theories in the young field of psychology either fell away or evolved into something else, psychoanalysis remains an important concept and practice today. The next big shakeup rolled in during the first half of the 20th century when behaviorism gained a higher profile. Heavy hitters like Ivan Pavlov, John B. Watson, and B.F. Skinner were key players here. They focused on the study of observable behavior. You may remember Skinner as the dude who put rats and pigeons and babies in boxes and conditioned them to perform certain behaviors. Right around when Freud escaped to England, Skinner published his Behavior of Organisms, ushering in the era of behaviorism, which remained all the rage well into the 1960s. The other major force at the time was, of course, Freud's psychoanalysis and its many descendants, collectively known as the psychodynamic theories. These focused on the importance of early experiences in shaping the unconsciousness and how that process affects our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and personalities. By the mid-20th century, other major forces in psychology were also brewing. Schools we'll explore later in this course, including humanist psychology, which focuses on nurturing personal growth, cognitive science, and neuroscience, all of which contributed their own unique takes on the study of mind. Today's formal definition of psychology, the study of behavior and mental processes, is a nice amalgamation that pulls from all these different schools of thought. It recognizes the need for observing and recording behavior, whether that's screaming, crying, or playing air saxophone to an imaginary audience, but it also gives credit to our mental processes, what we think and feel and believe while we're tearing it up on our invisible instruments. Because again, the point that I really want you to take home is that psychology is an integrative science. Yes, folks still get grumpy and disagree plenty, but the essence of the discipline has everything to do with creating different ways of asking interesting questions and attempting to answer them through all kinds of data gathering methods. The human mind is complicated. There is no single way to effectively crack it open. It must be pried at from all sides. Harvard astronomer Owen Gingerich has gazed into the distant horizons of space, and even he has acknowledged that the human brain is by far the most complex physical object known to us in the entire cosmos. And we all get to have one of our very own, knocking around right up in here. We here at Crash Course are really excited to spend the next several months delving into the world of psychology, how it applies to our lives, our minds, and our hearts, and how it deepens our understanding of each other, our world, and ourselves. Thanks for watching this first lesson in Crash Course Psychology, and I'd like to especially thank all of our subbable subscribers, without whom we would literally not be able to do this. Would you like...
Okay. I know it was too much to handle, but whatever was desired of you to pick up, we already had a discussion on that, right? So again, concluding that human psychology, or psychology as a discipline, it's a science of behavior and mental processes. And you as coaches would be dealing more with the conscious processes, but my idea of introducing you to the subconscious and unconscious was that even though your coaches would not be aware of what is the driving force behind so many behaviors, a little exposure to, yes, there are certain domains of our mind that we can't directly crack up and access, right? But, they make their presence felt through certain remarks that people make, a certain slip of tongues that they have. So as a coach, you have... you don't just focus on what is being said, right? You also focus on body language and gestures, because that's behavior, right? And also, you are very sensitive to things that are not even said. Sometimes there is silence. You ask certain questions and the person is really struggling to answer those things. So those are the windows which you understand that there are certain gaps in the psyche, right? And there are certain issues probably my coachee is struggling with, and you got to gentle up your approach a bit there, and you have to ask very gently nudging and probing questions in those spaces, more open-ended questions in those spaces, and that's how you're able to bring forth certain things that the person is not very comfortable acknowledging. So that's one part of psychology. Any questions here? Anybody?
Yeah, so since you mentioned about the subconscious mind and unconscious mind, right? So both are same. That's what you have concluded, right?
You're talking about the video? You're talking about...
Yeah, no. Yeah, in between you stopped and you said, right? Subconscious mind and
non-conscious. No, that's non-conscious. Yeah, subconscious
okay.
and unconscious are two different aspects. So it was non-conscious. So since it was a new term, so I thought I'll just let you know that it's just the same.
Okay, so there is one more mind, is super conscious mind, that is intuition, right? So conscious mind is our temporary records, so there is no impact on that. Absolutely. Subconscious mind, if somebody is hurt, if you are happy, there also we are in that subconscious mind. And if you go down, you will be in your super conscious mind, intuition. If you further go down, you will be into your ESP, extra sensitive perception. You know what is going to happen, all those things. So I'm leaving that layer out.
Correct.
So the problem in the coaching or whatever, because of this subconscious mind record, somebody has hurt, that is creating a subconscious mind record. Whenever we are referring that record, it is triggering some negative energy. Why we are angry than yesterday? The moment we are thinking about that person, that record is going out of us. What we are doing, we are creating, hey, that person is like that, this person is like that, he will be always like that. We are keep on adding new subconscious mind record. That's what we are angry than yesterday. So there are multiple techniques I used to follow to remove those subconscious mind record. If I take all my subconscious mind record to somebody else, they will have that open mindset and closed mindset about that other person's perseverance, and they will behave like that. So right now we are having the first time interaction. We don't have any subconscious mind record. We are talking with the conscious mind. Maybe after 1 month, you know my wavering, you know my way of thinking. So what kind of, there may be chances we can create subconscious mind record. Thereby, yeah, I'll stop this. So I'll share more things on the understanding.
You're absolutely right. So we got to have information about one another because that's a reference point, isn't it? But then if we are too rigid, that we are not open to revising that information, and we are working from the space of stereotypes and prejudices, right? And we are not just ready to budge. That's stagnation, isn't it? So conscious mind allows us to kind of reframing things, refreshing things, isn't it? And it helps us upgrade that information, and more conscious we are as humans. You know, when I'm using not the word conscious as conscious mind, but as conscious humans, you know, we are more open to experience, we are more accepting, and all of you must have heard of this technique called mindfulness.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So mindfulness is basically operating from your conscious mind, right? And not letting the pre-programmed whatever in your unconscious, subconscious to influence your dynamic interactions with your current moment, with this sacred moment that we are living.
Yeah. So
that's the beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So typically, the understanding humans about, you are asking about the men, and the men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Men will think from brain perspective, women will think from heart perspective. Men will only know, this is good, this is bad. Women will think only, this is, I like it, I don't like it. Say for example, I quickly finish it in a minute, maybe 30 seconds. If we go for a car,
go ahead.
Yeah, if we go to purchase a car, if it is a woman, she will tell from her bottom of her heart, I like this. Men will always think from brain. He may say, he may calculate, okay, this is connecting to my budget, this my family is liking, all goods and bads he will do. But woman will think from heart. He will only know, I like this or I don't like this. Is this what you are covering? The next one?
Yeah, masculinity, femininity you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, correct. So I will just quickly wind up. Thank you for unfolding.
Before jumping over there. No. So Lakshmi, that video itself was too much, and you are adding additional.
So don't bother too much about the
one
video.
question I had.
Yeah, sure.
People over there, was that the regular speed of the video, or was it late speed?
That was
I didn't play 2x. I didn't play 2x.
No, that was crash course. That's why.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too crashing.
it literally crashed, right? A lot of things here.
Actually, I was thinking of Agastya Samhita and all those things where Agastya Muni tells Rama about mind and its function. It's so beautiful. I was trying to connect over there. This crashed everything. So now I'm back now. Yeah, okay. Please go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to check on that, like on the speed of video. That's all.
No. And see, you don't have to absorb everything. A lot of history and a lot of schools and structures and just take the highlights. So that's how, you know, I initiated that conversation. That's the take home, and that's something you ought to keep with yourself, right? Okay. So psychology comes from philosophy and biology, right? Because brain, mind, psyche, amalgamation, and you know, it has to do with how we think and feel. And our thinking and feeling, it certainly gets influenced by, I think it needs to be a two-way, I would say, stream, that our thinking and feeling, you know, it influences our attitude, perception, personality, and traits, and the other way around. Okay. And all this is the motivation behind our behavior. Correct? So we are made up of so many different aspects, but ultimately it's an integration of all, and psychology tries to systematically understand each of these aspects, but not in a segregated manner. You know, it works and it understands all these different aspects of us and how they dynamically interact with one another. Right? So that's what is psychology. And then where Lakshmi took us, I'm going to systematically introduce masculine and feminine energies. Raghunandan, you said you touched upon something from mythology. Am I right? Okay. So the concept of masculinity, femininity was introduced by the West. I do not know. You know, we as a collective culture, we are more accepting to things. When our concepts go in West, they get a, you know, tag of the West, right? So what was Vipassana meditation? We were not too receptive of that. But when suddenly it became mindfulness, there is more acceptance to that, isn't it? So
yeah, I call it as foreign return. Any concept which is, yeah, the origin is from India. Yes. Indians don't value. The moment it becomes foreign return, somehow it's become like the thing.
Isn't it? So when you talk about Vipassana, very few takers. When you say John Kabat-Zinn and you talk about mindfulness, people are all ears and they are more receptive. They would pay more and they will be part of your programs. So anyway,
Vipassana meditation is connected with this. So I have also done 10 days like Vipassana.
Very
That's
nice.
Excellent.
No, I'm not going to talk about Vipassana and mindfulness here. I'm just generally talking that the concept of masculinity, feminism, you know, the Adi Shiva, the Ardhanarishwar, is nothing but an epitome of masculinity and femininity, isn't it? But when Jung, one of the students of Freud, he brought up this concept, again, you know, we made more sense of it and we got more receptive of it. Now, we are born with a sex, right? So it's either girls or boys, and gender is something which is a totally sociological process, right? So blue for boys and pink for girls and this for boys and that for girls, and लड़के रोते नहीं हैं और लड़कियां ऐसे नहीं करती हैं, लड़के ऐसे करते हैं, लड़कियां वैसे नहीं करती. This is a major cause of you know, a lot of probably lack of understanding that exists between the two genders, between two partners, because when we look at ourselves as genders, right, or yeah, not sexes but genders, we are not being our authentic self. We are not being our authentic selves. Why? Because masculinity and femininity, this is not the roles we play, right? These are the energies that we have. Human body is a congregation, an amalgamation of opposites. Nature has created everything in opposites. Din hai to raat hai. This day there is night. If there is agony and pain, there is joy and happiness and pleasure. Nature has created everything in pairs, in opposites, right? And all these things, you know, they are complementary to each other. Correct. Now, when we talk about masculinity, that's one aspect of our psyche, and femininity, it's another aspect of our psyche, and we need both. We need both. When we look at feminine energies, you know, it's more care and nurturance, and it's more softness, softer parts of us, right? Whereas when we look at the masculine aspects of our energy, that is the more toughened side of us. Okay, let's go back to the prehistoric eras, because, you know, women and God, the nature created us in a very gentle balance between the two energies, right? But because, you know, women were bearing children, they still are, women bear children and nursing children, going back to the prehistoric Paleolithic era. So obviously, you know, it made sense that if they stayed back home, because they were to nurse children, and it was a great idea for men to go out, look for food, bring back food, right? And then, you know, as the civilization evolved from hunter-gatherers, we became cultivators, we settled down. So gradually what happened, the roles got defined. And the women were kind of got more, I would say, the domesticated roles, and men got the roles outside the house. And those roles, they kind of then determined our social roles that we needed to play. Not only they determined the social roles that we play, it also, a lot of social roles, expectations are now attached to being a woman and being a man. Right? And for years it worked very well, because women were homemakers and men were the bread earners. There was a gentle balance between the two energies, with well-defined roles, with all the social expectations being met. Someone is unmuted. Can you please check your mics and mute yourself? It's got a bit of disturbance. Someone who's joined from iPhone, I can't even make out who's that. If you could please mute yourself. Thank you. Right. But now, now, why am I getting into the little nitty-gritty of this is that now we stand at a junction where,
please scan your first item,
where you try to, Seema, can you somehow check?
Okay. Ian, are you there? Ian, may I request you to please put your mic on mute?
Can I do
insert
it?
cache or
If you, Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to talk about two specific energies that can be expressed through this image. The energy that flows here is male and female.
Yeah. So now, why I'm again getting into the nitty-gritty of it is because, again, you know, as coaches and as people who are going to work with people, we need to understand this, that we all need to be living up to the expectations of the gender roles that the society has kind of imposed on us, right? And what happens is like, let's suppose, no, so I'm a born woman, right? But let's suppose I have those characteristics which are kind of rated, tagged, and understood as more masculine characteristics. You know, maybe when I say masculine characteristics, domination, you know, men are, it's okay in our societies for men to be dominated, but it's not all that okay for women to be dominated, right? Similarly, yeah, what I'm trying to tell you is, what do you think is the origin of word sissy? And what is the same word for women we use? We use sissy for boys, tomboy for women. Correct? What does that imply? It implies that if you are a woman, this is the prototype, right, that you need to kind of conform to. And if you are a man, this is your prototype. You need to conform to that. And if you don't, as a man, you become sissy. Why? It's like more of feminine energy in you. If a man is very gentle, very nurturing, you know, what other words can I use?
Mother-like.
Mother-like, you know, sissy. Correct? Men have to be strong, emotionally strong. Socially, they should be dominating, leading from the front and stuff like that. If you don't, you're sissy. And similarly, women need to be coy, confirming, caring, nurturing, and accepting kind. Correct? We got to redefine it now. Now we are in an era where the economic roles, the social roles that men and women are playing have been redefined. Women have moved out of the houses, right? So there is this psychologist, her name is Ben. She has coined a beautiful term. It's called androgynous, right? Which simply means, irrespective of your gender, you've got to be a gentle balance of both the feminine and masculine energies within you. What does that mean? It means that you got to be so authentic a human being, right? And you got to be so much in touch with your natural self, right? And you got to evolve so much as a person that you can choose to be submissive or dominating as per the demands of the situation, right? So what I'm talking about is the gentle balance, the flexibility, the freedom of choice that we human beings need to have within ourselves to switch roles, or to switch our energies from masculine to feminine, from feminine to masculine, depending upon the situational demands, right? Most couples are working these days, right? So women working out of the house, and there would be times that men need to be back at home looking after the home, right? So that's the time when you have to switch off your, that alpha character, alpha male side of you, and you got to be more nurturing, and you got to be more gentle, and you have to be a caregiver at that moment. You can only do that, you can only do justice to that if you're in touch with the feminine energies within you, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that because there are social role expectations, because there are conformity pressures, so what happens is if being a woman, if let's suppose I'm dominating as an individual, I will shut down, I will repress the dominant side of me to fit into that role that my society expects me to play. And similarly, if I'm a man and I'm nurturing and I'm caring and I'm gentle, right? Just because there's a gender role expectation for me to be a tough nut, I'm going to discard that aspect of me. Well, that's not an authentic life. You are leading a kind of incomplete life because you're not completely letting who you really are, who you naturally are, who you biologically are, to manifest itself, to express itself. So as a culture, as a world, as a planet, we need to be looking at ourselves from gender neutral perspective. I love this word, gender neutral, right? Which means that you have certain core traits and characteristics, right? And you got to be in touch with them, and you got to be using them to your advantage as and when required. So if when you're working, you can't be a submissive worker at place just because you're a woman. It's going to be tough for you to survive. So in those moments, you got to be, in touch with your masculine energies. Whereas as a man, if the woman of the house is not in the house, well, please, leave that crown of being a man or a breadwinner, whoever, outside in the garage. Once you enter your house, and if the feminine, so-called feminine energy is absent, please evoke that energy within you, right? And take care. And similarly, these days we are talking about the concept of compassionate leadership. We have redefined the concept of alpha male, if you've heard of that. So earlier, the alpha male used to be the leader of the pack who would fight with the rest of the males and be the most dominating, means the strongest, most male, and passes on the genes to the next generation. Correct? The new definition of an alpha male or the alpha leader is someone who is sensitive to the needs of the pack. Isn't it? We are talking about constellation leadership these days, where if we are 22 people, this is a constellation. Each one is a star. We all have our strengths, right? And as a leader, the leader needs to actually be aware of who's good at what and make someone responsible for that particular task. Delegate that particular task and, use that ability to the best of achievement of the goals that we have set up for the group. So the beauty of what I'm sharing with you at the moment is that we got to redefine the rigid boundaries that we describe ourselves as. When you say, I'm like this, I'm not going to change, right? In Hindi, I know a lot of you may not understand. Hum to aise hi hai. This is who I am. Take me or leave me. Well, that's not going to work. You got to be flexible. You got to have porous boundaries, right? Where you're receptive enough to, switch hats and flip roles as and when required. Right? So if you're just the white side or the black side of it, see, you're just one half of the circle. So understanding the concept of masculinity and femininity makes us complete. Purnata, it's a beautiful word, to be purna, to be complete, right? Any reflections, any questions on this?
None from
Anybody?
me.
Sorted?
Why did we move to this level? Is it that was, when we look at it, it rather looks like we were probably earlier, as you rightly said, there was an alpha male, like what we have in the animal group. We had an alpha male also in our tribe with whom we were, right? So as primates, probably. In due course of time, as we evolved from being an animal to a human level, where our physical strength was not a big matter, but we started becoming more brain-oriented, mind-oriented, feeling-oriented.
Yeah.
So the physical difference, which clearly demarcated the gender, that was no longer a need, right, to the tribe which we are in now. So probably that caused a difference is what I mean, it's just a thought. I don't know whether it is.
Beautiful reflection. Yeah.
Just thought probably it's something else. Thought struck me, so I thought I'd share it.
You said it, Karthik, because anything which is concrete is very easy to grasp and catch hold of. But when we talk about energy, psyche, these are such abstract things that it doesn't. It's not so easy to kind of go ahead and have that kind of understanding and have that sensitivity to look at things from that perspective. So the easiest was physiological difference.
Right.
You said that.
Thank you.
Anyone? Anything else? Right. So what's the take home? The take home is, please accept yourself, as who you are. So that's what, one of my greatest lessons the subject has taught me is to move above and move away from good, bad, positive, and negative. We don't use those words as a coach, as a therapist, but that's how we raise children. Good girl, good boy, is one of the favorite. I think the maximum interaction that happens between parents and children. Good girl, good boy. Yeah. When we talk about emotions, we say anxiety, anger, negative emotions. And joy, happiness, positive emotions. No, nothing. I mean, emotions can't be positive, negative. These are just effective emotions and ineffective emotions. Right? So, we got to be in touch with ourselves and look at ourselves as complete wholes, right? We are not to attach labels to our attributions, to our traits, to characteristics as good and bad, positive and negative. They just are. They just are. Right? Because, when you remove these labels and these tags, it's so much easier to accept whatever it is. Correct? So very important. One hears this so often: accept yourself as you are. Right? That simply means not only accepting the effective sides of you, but the so-called ineffective sides of you, which simply got one example. If you have anger issues, please accept it. Because acceptance is the first step towards change. We say acknowledge, accept, act. Right? Now, what we do is we attach labels. Anger, negative. No. Mujhe gussa nahi aata. I don't get angry. I don't have anger issues. We simply deny it. Once you are denying something, tell me, how do you act on it? How do you change it? How do you change towards better? Right? So again, you really don't have to understand masculinity, femininity as any complicated constructs. Just understand it that, we are a communion of opposites. And we got to accept whatever we are, whoever we are, irrespective of, the culture we come from, the society we belong to, the surnames we have, the tags we wear, the professions we are in, and this so-called dichotomy of, the binary dichotomy of the society, males and females. That's the conclusion of this part of the class.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Sure.
Ma'am, is it that every one of us do have a combination of the feminine and the masculine qualities? Or is it that a person can be just masculine and they just don't have those emotions and the characteristics of a feminine behavior, emotions, not behavior, I would say, in any given circumstance of life? So
okay,
is it
a very relevant question. Yeah. Now we can look at, I can answer these questions in two ways. Naama, there is something called as a cardinal trait in an individual, right? So, and that cardinal trait is, a one-line definition or a one characteristic definition of your personality, isn't it? So when you think of Mother Teresa, when you think of Nelson Mandela, when you think of Gandhi, when you think of Hitler, they are synonymous to one word, like Mother Teresa, care and nurturance. Nelson Mandela, maybe non-violence. Gandhi, non-violence. Hitler, aggression. Correct? So you're right. There could be a handful of people who are so ruled by a particular trait that the rest of the traits, they become secondary in them. Right? So there could be a handful of people, but all of us, or majority of us, we are not ruled by a cardinal trait, and we have that gentle balance, which does get out of balance. Now, the next part of the question is that probably, we are all born with the gentle balance of all these energies, but because of the process of socialization, we are insensitized to a part of us. Isn't it? There is so much of poking, checking, correction, right? And there is so much of arm twisting and conformity pressure that the whole process of parenting and socialization, make us cordon off that side, that other side of us, and we live either with the feminine energy or the masculine energy. So that's probably what lopsided parenting and socialization do to us.
So, ma'am, can we safely say that it's not absent, but they're unaware of that side of the...
Absolutely.
Can we say that it's not absent? It is there. It's prevalent in all individuals. It's only it's untapped.
Correct.
Right. All right.
Yes. Like all across the world, we hear this one phrase: "Boys don't cry." Isn't it? It is insensitizing men to the emotion of hurt. Right. And to the emotion of crying. You know, I always ask this question when a baby is born. What's the first thing the baby does? Anybody?
Cry.
Cry. Irrespective of the sex, the gender. And now you're rearing one half of the society and you're insensitizing one half of the society to this so core basic emotion of our existence. Isn't it? So that's how, you know, it is so easy for men to get aggressive, for men to get violent, because we trained them to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So all of you who are parents on this call, right? We got to raise children in a gender neutral manner, right? Where we teach girls, I mean, just allow children to be. Let them unfold as who they naturally are, rather than, you know, arm twisting them and kind of preparing them to be something which they naturally are not. So maybe they become so-called accomplished and successful human beings because of the way you have brought them up, right? So much achievement oriented and this and that. But I do not know how joyful human beings would they be, because, you know, we have created a large gap between who they actually are and what we have created out of them. Right?
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, my pleasure. So now next, move on to the next part of this conversation. Talking about...
I have a question. May I ask?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So is there any way through which we can balance our masculine and feminine energies?
Mridu, is this how we pronounce your name?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Mridu, first of all, you know, you got to be in touch with who you authentically are, right? And have a voice of your own. If, let's suppose, I'm assuming that, you know, being woman, so maybe, you know, the dominant side of us, or the initiative side of us is sometimes squelched, right? Girls don't do this, women don't do this. So now again, a very beautiful learning that I have grasped, and I have something that I've learned through psychology, is that when we look at males and females, right? Because as I said, you know, males have always been the ones who have set the rules, whether it was to be managers, whether it was to be leaders, whether it was to be heads, it was all male dominated. And I've given you a little history of that. Why? What has happened is that men have a deficit mindset about women, isn't it? So when we look at, say, there are so many stereotypes, and again, I'm not a feminist, I'm a very gender neutral person. It's just for the sake of example I'm sharing it. There is a stereotype which at least is held in northern part of the India: women are bad drivers. I don't know about the rest of the world and the rest of the country, right? There is a stereotype, women are not so effective leaders. Correct. Why? Because how women function, like in beginning, somebody talked about, Karthik talked about it, like when women function, they are left brain dominant, men function, they are right brain dominant. So because, you know, men had always been in majority in certain sections, driving, leadership, headship. Now when a woman works in that domain, right? So we compare how the prototype of functioning in that area was, and this new way of functioning is like there's a deficit in her. So from the hypothesis of deficit, we have to move on to the hypothesis of difference. if you're able to get what I'm trying to say. It's not that men are superior or inferior to women. It's not that men are inferior or superior to women. It's just that we have complementary skill set, right? So similarly, Mridu, when we look at our feminine and masculine energies within us, first of all, we have to stop labeling those attributes. This is bad, this is good. This is positive, this is negative, right? Anything that nature has equipped us with, it had some purpose, okay? So even if it's anger, Mridu, anger helps us in survival. Fear, it helps us in survival, right? Anxiety, like we in the beginning, Seema and I were discussing, anxiety tells us to be aware in a particular situation, right? So one way of balancing things out within us is not to attach labels. When I say not to attach labels, I mean positive, negative, good, bad, right? Even, those expectations of being brilliant, being genius, being a natural. Please strip off all these labels that you attach. It's like, when you peel an onion, just layer by layer, remove all this so that you can actually get in touch with your core. And that would need introspection. That would need sitting with yourself, or that probably would be one session between a coach and a coachee, or a therapist and you, and a lot of layers can be removed, and you can actually get to the core of your authentic being.
Beautiful.
Yes,
yes, surely. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay, talking about the manager and leader, right? So yeah, let's not look at it as managers and leaders of organizations, right? Let's just look at ourselves as managers and leaders, probably of our lives, of our relationships, right? And again, there has been a beautiful paradigm shift in psychology because of the impact of what is called as positive psychology. That's my core area. I'm a practicing positive psychologist and applied positive psychologist. So I work in the area of building up strengths and building up human capital. My essential role as a professional is to help you get in touch with your strengths, because enough has been done and worked in the area of telling people you're not good at this, improve. I belong to the other side of it, when I help people discover what their core strengths are and how can they use those strengths to their advantage, right? So why I brought this was, when we look at our lives from the managerial perspective, right, we are more bothered about the goals, accomplishments, achievements, and but when we look at our lives from the leader's perspective, right, we are looking at the process, we are looking at the strategy, right? We are more interested in the how of something rather than the what of something. We are more interested in the why of something, right, rather than the what of something. So again, as a society, as a global society, we are obsessed with ends, isn't it? Materialistic ends, professional ends. So what is in it for me, right? What is my gain? And we only celebrate ends, success, achievement, goal achievement, and all that. So in the whole process, what has happened is that we have neglected the process of reaching that end. Like taking the example from the world of education, right? We are all obsessed. We have been for very long, been obsessed with marks. 92%, 4%, 98%, 99%. It's crazy, at least in India. Again, I do not know about the rest of the parts of the world, right? So now what has happened is because it is marks that matter, right? So children resorted to cheating, unethical ways, right? There have been proxy people writing marks exams for one another, but end of the day, you had a worksheet or your mark sheet to produce. So where is the skill? Where is the knowledge, right? Where is love for learning? It's completely gone missing. Okay, so when we look at our lives from the mindset of a leader, it's growth mindset, isn't it? Where it's the processes that matter, where it's the strategy that matter, where it's the means that matter. Because if the processes, the strategy, the means are in place, well, I mean, there is no possibility that the goal would not be achieved, because you're just bang on, right on. You're absolutely on the right track. So bit by bit, you're moving towards, while you're enjoying that journey, right, of achieving whatever you desire to achieve. And you're not, angsty while you're in the process of achievement, and you're not scared, what if I don't? Isn't it? You are enjoying so much that path that you become the master. You develop the competence, the skill that is required to actually attain that specific goal. So that's how I look at manager and leaders' perspective, right? And of course, leadership is more about intuitive feelings and those aspects, whereas a manager is more around, work-oriented, profit-oriented, right? So that's the whole thing. So again, a lot of you are from the corporate world, from education. We have families, we have children, right? If we really, really want to nurture talent, we got to be more oriented. Yes, we need a vision, no doubt about it. We need a goal, we need the destiny where we want to move forward towards. But once that goal is set, right, once you have a clear picture of what is it that you desire, now you got to work completely on the how of that desire. Right? And how is process? How is something which is in making, right? And when we focus on the how and we keep ticking those boxes, when we keep moving one step forward towards the so-called desired goal, it is so self-reinforcing. It is so energizing, right? So that's what basically I was wanting to share with you on from this particular perspective, right? Yeah, so human beings are creatures of habit. We know that. These habits can lead to rigid behavioral responses. We understand it by now. If your current approach to something isn't working, right? So it's because, I'm not able to read this because I'm not able to move. Yeah, it may be because you're preferencing a viewpoint and you're stuck in the status quo. Now, when will you prefer a viewpoint, or when do you get stuck in the status quo? When you're not aware of all the alternatives that exist, and when you're not in touch with, the whole gamut of potential that you have. Understanding the model of masculine and feminine energy help us see ourselves, our preferences, right, and gain more flexibility. So that's the beauty of masculine, understanding masculinity and femininity concepts, right? You understand that you're much bigger than what you perceived yourself to be so far. All right, any questions so far? Any clarification? Any reflection? All right. Karthik, do you wish to say something?
Yes, that's absolutely what you said is absolutely right, is what I feel. Because like what Lakshmi was mentioning initially, the women are supposed to think from the heart, wherein Karuna, call off. It's more a graceful gesture or emotion than the masculinity, which is more rigid. Thinking is more rigid and more goal focused, all that we say. And we miss looking at one side of us. We tend to miss the other aspect of it, wherein that aspect, had it been glued together with this together would definitely make things more easier and move towards a resolution or solution oriented, which is, yes, that's right.
Beautiful. Lovely. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, I really liked whatever you were saying on the positive side of the side only you will see, right? So I will also see my team. Only I will observe on the positive things. The negative things, they themselves will correct and they will update it. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
And multiple things you have said, like on the why part, how part, those are all great things. Excellent.
Also, Lakshmi, as a leader, we need to tell our team or people, our colleagues, what is not working well. Only thing is how you give that constructive feedback is important, isn't it? So when we are critical of people and you pull your subordinates up amongst 10 other people, that's so humiliating. Right. So how can we not be a compassionate leader is something that doesn't sink in me. You are in a power position. You are in a position of an influencer. How can you not use that position to uplift others and take them forward and, fine tune those nuances which would help them evolve personally, professionally, relationally? How can we be so insensitive? Right?
Yeah.
So I have not really worked in corporate culture. So when I talk to my husband, who's a banker, so many times he would tell me, you don't know how the corporate world operates, right? I always tell him, I'm happy I do not know how the corporate world operates. I'm very happy, being a teacher and a trainer and a consultant and, as a therapist, because I'm so happy that I am actually helping people feel good about themselves. Yeah. Isn't it? So all those of you who are in leadership roles, I mean, my earnest request to all of you, take people along, empower them, give them wings to fly. There is no reason for us to be insecure if we are competent enough and if we know our role. There is no reason for us to feel any kind of insecurity in our jobs and roles. Right? Okay.
I have something to say.
Please,
okay, I think with EI gaining popularity and corporates also realizing its relevance to leading, I'm a leadership coach, so I'm talking out of my limited experience. We are encouraging people to follow the feminine energy because as per EI, assessing how others feel comes naturally to the female leaders, most of the female leaders. All right. So we are encouraging leaders to follow all the gamut of EI. I think that's where they are looking at a combination of masculine and feminine energies, irrespective of the gender. So I think it's changing in the corporate world as well.
So happy to hear that, Seema. Yeah. I know, because yes, I do work as an emotional well-being consultant with a lot of corporate houses. So the fact that people are, or the HR is sensitive to the emotional wellness part, to the relational part, it is so reassuring for me as a professional that we are looking at the holistic picture now and not just, the competence, the performance and the cognitive aspects of our jobs and our professions. That's incomplete. Yeah, that's just the half part of it.
I agree with that.
Seema, have you finished? I'm sorry. Have you finished? Okay. Ma'am, I just want to add one more thing. That this piece of training and you're imparting this kind of knowledge to us is I have been in touch with Kartik Abdul on a very close basis, and I've been with this group since the last 2 months, and I've been understanding what good souls they are. This kind of this kind of knowledge and this kind of impartment is only going to, I can see how Kartik was nodding vigorously while he was saying, and I was seeing how Vink, not Lakshmi, how he was, nodding vigorously. We can only become better souls after this kind of, this kind of an education. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being so receptive. So receptive. You get the best out of this speaker when you send those vibes. When I know that whatever I'm saying, we are all resonating on that frequency, and whatever I'm saying, it is being accepted. It is so much easier for me to be my authentic self. Right. So you're getting the best out of me, and the whole credit is to all of you. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So next we talk about motivation. Yeah. So both emotions and motivation, they come from the same verb, emovere, E-M-O-V-E-R-E. And both emotions and motivation, they move us, they spurt us into action, isn't it? So when you're emotional, when you're angry, when you're maybe angsty, whatever, you would see a lot of movement, correct? So does happen when we are motivated. So they are aspects of dynamic psychology, and I will quickly take you through different aspects of motivation. Now, sorry. Yeah. So when we are born, we're only intrinsically motivated. When I say intrinsically motivated, look at the curiosity in the child. Look at the need for competence in the child. Children don't work for reinforcements, and they don't work for bonuses and promotions, right? They do things for the love of things, right? They are so inquisitive. They are so curious. They look at the world from the sense of awe. And then we adults, we are such agents of corruption, isn't it? We pay attention, we pay more attention to children when they're learning new things, when they are performing what we assume to be culturally relevant, academically maybe desirable, so on and so forth. So we condition people. In that video that we watched about psychology, there was a reference of humanistic psychology, right? It is the most beautiful school of psychology because it focuses and it celebrates this growth orientation amongst people. Each one of us, we are motivated to grow, to learn, to evolve, to progress. That's our natural, authentic self. However, the environment sometimes is not conducive to that growth, right? The very typical household examples in India, the child wants to pursue photography, but the parent would desire him to join one of those coaching factories and crack the premier engineering colleges. So we do not allow people to blossom, especially children. I do not know, again, the power play that happens in household. We do not allow people, children, subordinates, colleagues, friends, spouses, to bloom the way they would have naturally unfolded. And we just keep on applying conditions applied. Things are changing, but I remember when we were small, again, a very, very conspicuous and ubiquitous conversation between parents. You will get a cycle when you come first. Yeah, you'll get a car when you do this. Conditions apply. So most of our behaviors are they are acquired by virtue of conditioning. Look at the rewards and the punishment, the badges we give, the stars we give, the pat on the backs. And my issue is that why just associate these badges, these stars with cognitive accomplishments, isn't it? We talk so much about ethics going missing from the planet, things like integrity extincting, isn't it? Because we do not celebrate, because we do not reinforce, because nobody talks about it. Nobody is rewarded for being ethical, for being honest. Rather, if I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong, when people are obtusely honest, we say, he's little silly. He's not street smart, right? So what we are celebrating actually is the other end of the continent. People like Nirav Modi, people like Malaya, they get so much of media coverage, right? Now the whole world knows it. My students, they ask me, ma'am, why do we need to study? Why can't we siphon off something? Why can't we learn these, money heists and just get away with it and just be comfortable? And trust me, sometimes I don't even answer because they're too young to understand certain concepts, right? So how many of us, or how much of our media, our social media, actually celebrates the so-called what we used to learn in, the moral science chapters and moral science classes in our school, right? So we are creatures of habits, and our habits are something which are motivated, which spot from what would be rewarded and what would be reinforced, right? So again, as coaches, as parents, and as people in power, as leaders, please be mindful of what is it that you are rewarding, right? So normally, who's the employee of the week? Who has made maximum sales performance, right? Who gets promotion? Who brings maximum money, right? Do we have an employee of the week or employee of the month who has been punctual, who has been very honest to his work, very committed to whatever he's been doing, dedicated? Rather, poor those guys, they become scapegoats. They are the donkeys who do the maximum dirty work, and then there are these smart cookies who know how to take maximum spotlight and how to be visible. So imagine the kind of world we are living in, and we created it. We can't, shirk our shoulders and palm off this responsibility on someone else, correct? So now let's look at what motivates us. So there is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is all internal. Yeah, it has to do with curiosity. It has to do with competence. It has to do with mastery. It has to do with love for that particular thing. Yeah, when we are intrinsically motivated, it's the process that matters more. You enjoy the journey. Yeah, you enjoy the task more than the completion of the task. And again, I really want to introduce a new perspective to you. Yeah, so it's Ganpati being celebrated in a large part of the country these days. Okay, so it's those 10 days of Ganpati, bringing him home, the celebrations, right? The festivity that we enjoy, not the end where you do the Visarjan and you come back home and it's all over, isn't it? So similarly, whether it's life, it's profession, it's relationships, whatever, let's enjoy the dynamicity, of that whole process rather than what will happen in the end. Well, you know what happens in the end. The life, when it ends, it's all ends in the same spot for all of us. How can we be waiting for the end, guys? How can we be celebrating that end? It's the journey, it's the life that needs to be celebrated, correct? Whereas when we look at motivation from the extrinsic perspective, it's all about what you get in the end, the rewards, the reinforcements, the visibility, right? The badges. I'm not saying those are not important. I'm not saying that at all. But let there be again a balance, right? And let's not just make it about rewards, about reinforcements, about the trophies and the badges. Let's enjoy the journey, correct? And then there is another drive for motivation. One is achievement, second is affiliation, and third is power. Achievement motivation is what I've been just talking to you about. It's about internal standards of excellence. It's about raising the bar every time. So many of these Olympics gold medalists, so many of sports personnel, they keep breaking their own records because they keep challenging themselves. They are constantly on that road of improvement throughout. So achievement motivation, again, has to do with be calculatively taking risks. It's about yeah, internal excellence, and it's about being your own competitor. Like we hear this term so many times that, you got to be a better version of yourself. So people who are achievement oriented, they always are working on themselves. I think Seema also said it, work in progress, right? So people who are work in progress, they are achievement motivation, and it's the work per se, and what you achieve in the end of it, it motivates them to keep going. Affiliation. There are so many of us who are motivated because the people around us, our sense of belongingness with them, the visibility that we achieve, right? The strokes that we achieve, right? That importance of belongingness is what motivates them, right? So they don't want to be excluded. They don't want to be not a part of the group, and they would do anything to be an acceptable member of that group. They would be conforming to that group norms and that and that. And then there is a third source of motivation, which is power, right? And again, I don't have much qualms in saying that anybody who's in the position of power, type A personalities, right? Their ignition is power, to be able to influence people. It's wonderful to be in a position of power, but then again, let's not exploit people. That's neuroticism. That's I think it's someone is sick in the head when you're trying to exploit a fellow human being for your own gain and for your own advantage, right? But people do it, right? They want to remain at the top of the pyramid, and they do all sorts of things for that. And then there's a third perspective to motivation, which is hierarchy of needs. And this is something we will talk a little in detail. This is again Maslow. He established that humanistic school of psychology, and he talked about 2-3 things, which again, as coaches, as good human beings, we need to, again, good to name, as authentic human beings, I think we should need to know that. He has talked about 2-3 things. One important aspect, he says, which is important for growth, is free will, isn't it? So letting people be, allowing them to make choices, take decisions, right? And not burdening them with compliance and conformity pressure, and not arm twisting them to be the way we like them to be, and to get molded and to be in a particular kind of caste. That's free will. And then he talks about another very beautiful aspect, which is unconditional positive regard. Unconditional positive regard means accepting people the way they are, no conditions applied. You become like this, then I will like you. You bring this home, then I will love you. You get this medal, then I will appreciate you. That's conditional love, right? Unconditional love is, we love people for who they are, not for what they do, what they bring, what they gain, what they achieve. Those are secondary things, yeah. They are the add-ons of being human, isn't it? The first celebration, the first acceptance is who you are. Later comes those things, and those things, your achievements are not you, right? This is my hand, this is not me. So similarly, my achievements is not me. I'm not going to confuse my identity with the prefix in front of my name, Dr. Shilpa, right? I'm not going to confuse my identity with being a counselor or a therapist or a trainer. No, I am a human. And to take it to more metaphysical and transcendental things, we are all energy, guys. We are just energy, taken a particular form and shape, and we appear to each other the way we do because of our senses, right? So celebrating the authenticity of people being who they are, allowing them to be, right? And loving them without any conditions. That's when you're allowing that seed to bloom in the most natural manner that how it is meant to be, and that is what is called as self-actualization. See, look at the word self-actualization. You actually become who you are supposed to be, and we as the environmental forces, we are only facilitators, isn't it? Again, just to give you an example, so you bought some plants, correct, and you sown them in different pots. Most of the plants grew well. There is one plant which is not growing well. What do you do? What do you do to that if it's not growing?
We have to price. Whenever we are seeing, we have to appreciate this growing kind of.
All right. So from the perspective of energy, yes, appreciating it. Technically, if you were a gardener,
put some manure.
Exactly. If it is in the shade, you put it in the sun. You sometimes change the soil. If you're putting more water, you work on it. Hey, we don't blame the plant for not growing, right? We work on the environment. And what do we do when people around us are not growing as per our expectations? Naming, shaming, blaming. What are you doing? You're damaging the possibilities which have not yet unfolded. Please, we don't have the right to do that. Every seed has the possibility of becoming the mustard seed. I'm sure you are aware of this biblical, example. So every seed has the capacity to grow and become a fruit-bearing and a shade-giving tree. And what are we doing? So when the environment, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm sure somewhere you must have encountered this. When the environment is facilitating, growth automatically happens. That's the natural trajectory, right? And we, again, people being in position of power, people being in position of influence, we just have to allow that opportunity. Growth will automatically happen. Trust me, we don't raise children, right? I mean, if the child is born, the physiological, the growth is going to happen, correct? So we just give that safe venue to a child at home. We give safe space to our subordinates, our colleagues at work. And once you create that space, you will be amazed with the productivity, the performance, the contribution, the commitment that people add to your organization, your role, right? That's the secret. That's the secret recipe to motivate others, right? So criticize in private, appreciate in public, talk about strengths, right? Let your environment be as non-critical, as non-evaluative as possible. Otherwise, for the fear of, evaluation, a lot of ideas just don't happen. Same goes for coaching. You got to be non-judgmental. You got to be non-evaluative. Then only, you build up that rapport, and that's how you facilitate that whole journey of your client. Okay? So that's how, in a nutshell, again, that's how we apply the understanding of psychology, first in fine-tuning ourselves, and then emancipating the same energy and creating that environment, that safe space where people bloom automatically. And that's how you become a popular coach. I mean, that's my recipe of coaching and therapy and parenting and being facilitators and mentors.